This is actually one of my favorite peperomia, but of course you've heard me say that before. This is Peperomia quadrangularis. And I love just the little leaf venation here that has, it looks like it has pinstripes, and it has this kind of stem that has 4 sides, which hence the term quadrangularis, which just means quadrangular. And it refers to this kind of 4 sides to this wiry little stem and these semi-succulent leaves. I've had this plant growing in this pot for probably 4 years now, and I have it growing about 6 feet away from my southwest facing window, and I've never moved it. So I treat this a little bit more like the plant that it is, which is a semi-succulent. And if you've ever actually seen this growing in the wild, it is all across South America. So it has a pretty extensive range, and it grows epiphytically, which means that it's growing on some other surface, usually a tree or some rocks or a craggy surface, which means that the roots are really not that extensive. This could be pretty pot bound. And like I said, I've had this growing in the same pot for quite some time. And like with peperomia, if you don't like to repot your plants, and if you're kind of lazy when it comes to that, then peperomia are for you, because they generally are diminutive species, and they don't need a lot of repotting. They don't mind being a little bit pot bound. This particular one makes a nice hanging basket plant, as you could see, very similarly to like a Peperomia dalstedtii. It just kind of hangs over the edge of the planter pot, which I think is really beautiful. I think if actually this runs along the ground, and if you give it more soil, it might actually even root up at some other parts of the node, particularly if the plant has a tendency to kind of break, because it is a little bit more of a wiry stem, and you have to be careful not to kind of break it if you kind of brush by it. As far as watering goes, I'm not watering all this much. I treat the plant just as it is, which is a semi-succulent, which means I'm not watering it all that often, and I have more of a well-draining mix that's kind of high in perlite. And because this particular pot doesn't have any hole at the bottom, I just have to be a little bit more mindful that I'm not watering it and there's like water sitting at the bottom of the pot. So if you don't feel comfortable, then I would suggest having a pot that has a little hole at the bottom. As far as fertilizing goes, this plant, I give it a general fertilizer, a nice well-balanced fertilizer. You could go organic or synthetic. Just remember that if you're going synthetic, to cut it by half. So if it's calling for about a half a teaspoon of fertilizer in a gallon, then go about 1/4 teaspoon per gallon. And if you're going organic fertilizer, then that's a much more gentler fertilizer, and you could actually do that on a bi-weekly basis. As far as pest pressures go, I haven't had any problems with this particular plant, and there is a plant nearby it that has mealybugs that has not had any kind of issue with this particular plant, at least nothing that I've seen. And like I said, it's been a pretty reliable grower for quite some time now, and is a little bit of a slower grower, but is one nonetheless that gives you a beautiful growth structure, especially if you want something that's hanging or pendant. So if you get your hands on Peperomia quadrangularis, then definitely pick one up, especially if you don't have a tremendous amount of space in your house.